Right?
Yes, it should be.
Just want to make sure. Start anytime? My main claim today will be that banning gun ownership will fail to effectively diminish gun-related crimes in the U.S. I will argue this with 3 secondary claims. The first one being that banning guns would only slow down criminals. It won't actually stop them from using weapons to harm the public. The second claim would be that instead of banning guns, you can actually escalate current background checks, and I will go into that later on. The third claim will be that the majority of gun-related crimes aren't that guns will accidentally go off. They're usually because somebody used a gun for something. Okay, to go over the first one, to ban a gun would mean nobody in the U.S. could legally own one, but as we've seen in prohibition, illegal drug sales here and there, that's not going to stop most people, especially with guns. Prohibition, I mean, a lot of people like drinking beer. Guns, especially in the U.S., a lot of people like shooting things. It's not going to slow anybody down, except for maybe the incredibly honest. So, to add to that, revenue for black market gun sales would skyrocket, which would in turn increase output of drugs that more people could buy, and this could just skyrocket plenty of other problems that are already out there right now. And another idea is that if you ban guns, people who are actually using guns to defend themselves would no longer have that option. I'm not sure if you've ever been in a fight between a mace and a gun, but spray mace isn't going to do very much if the person's too far away with a gun. Okay, my second claim is that current background checks aren't sufficient to determine how responsible a person will be with a gun. I actually looked it up on the FBI website for background checks. The main thing they look for is past felonies and long histories of maybe minor crimes like DUIs and public urination or anything like that. But they don't look at a lot of mental problems. They don't look at, well, they look at if you're forcibly put into a nut house, but they don't look at if you voluntarily check in, if you've ever been on suicide watch, if you have a history of alcoholism, or if you have a history of violence or abuse, or any of that. They don't look for any of that. And a lot of these issues are what lead to, say, suicides, mass shootings, et cetera, et cetera. If they added this to the list, that could actually help quite a bit. They also don't look at how long the person's been sober if they've been in AA. So if you have a history of alcoholism and that's what's keeping you from buying a gun, you can request an appeal after you've been in AA, but they don't check how long you've been sober. So if you said, say, a few years you've been sober and they have a way of checking that, that would be a very, very good way to make sure that alcoholics who commit gun-related crimes based on lack of judgment and anger because of the bottle, if they had that added to the sources, that would very greatly diminish the amount of crimes related to guns. Okay, my third one is that the gun's capacity to do harm is based on the person behind it. Well, the New York Times, they had a very interesting idea, is that if you regulate the number of bullets that are out there rather than the number of guns, that's easier to actually do. I'm sure people out there who own guns would be much more willing to surrender, say, an extra box of 3,000 bullets than all the nice rifles they spent countless hours shining and putting on shelves. So if they put it on a basis of how much a person will need bullets, if you petition that you need this many bullets for hunting and they give you that many, say 6 bullets, that would greatly diminish the amount of gun-related crimes already involved in the US. I do understand the fact that if there are no guns, guns can be fired, but back to my first argument, you take the guns out of an innocent person's hands, you're just making the job of the criminal a lot easier. And again, guns can't fire unless somebody's behind them to pull the trigger. They need a force to actually pull the trigger in order for the laws of physics to apply. So in conclusion, banning guns, it is not the absence of guns that will effectively deter criminals from committing gun-related crimes, but it is much heavier regulation of how guns are distributed and how weapons are distributed that will effectively diminish gun-related crimes. And I'm done.
444.
I think it's next.
All right, well, Kevin, you got a little stuck on the proposition right at the beginning, but you kind of pulled back and fixed it yourself, getting rid of the not terminology, for instance, and trying to keep it a little bit clearer. There's a setup of the secondary points, although those secondary claims aren't always stated as claims. In particular, the second and the third point don't even sound like declarative sentences, so it's a little bit hard to tell where you're going with those points. Obviously, there's controversy on this subject. I don't think there's much doubt that people know that there's some dispute about the way guns ought to be regulated. The question is, what is the dispute that you're talking about? And it really sounds like you're talking about not a ban on guns, but you're saying that some kind of gun control regulation would be effective at reducing the dangerous crimes. So that's fine. Tell us what that is and prove that that's the case. That would be a much clearer argument. So if you wanted to say adding mental health issues to the background checks would reduce the number of mass shootings or something like that, that's a claim of fact. And then you need to give us some examples, some statistics, some authority that says that this kind of thing would work. You just kind of give us some hypotheticals on this at best, and I don't know how you screen for those things except for the things that you talked about. The problem, of course, would be then, let's look at any of the examples that you came up with. Would any of those people have fit your screening criteria? That's one of the ways that maybe you could show that it would be workable. I think you run into an interesting dilemma here at the beginning because you say, look, there's no way that this is going to work. There's black markets on guns and all that kind of stuff. People who want to shoot guns, you're not going to be able to control them and all that kind of stuff. And later on, you're telling us how if we limit the bullets, we won't have a problem. I'm wondering why it is that guns can be controlled and bullets, guns can't be controlled, but bullets can be. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And so it's an inconsistency in the argument. There's not really much evidence in the argument. We've got some hypotheticals. There's a suggestion that there isn't any mental health check in any of the background checks that are going on. I'm not saying that you're not telling us the truth, but I don't know what that's based on. I don't know how you know that. There's no reference to a source for that fact, and I think that's problematic. Like I said, the only other things that you have vague references to the New York Times at one point, but you're not even quoting the New York Times. You're basically telling us what the Times proposal was. But I don't have any information that says that that proposal would work or that it would be viable, except your opinion on that, which is what you're trying to prove. And I don't think you have much information on that. I just thought that was kind of confusing. Now, you did do an okay job setting up the schedule, or I should say the outline at the beginning of the speech. Internally, you signposted those points pretty well, so I didn't have a big problem with that, except the way that the claims were phrased. Like I said, they weren't always phrased as claims. So the structural things, you're on the right track on. The evidence, I think that's where you're getting beat up a little bit. All right, thank you.